Okay, everyone, it's time for, well, I guess it's that time of the year, isn't it? We're getting so many classic releases that we're doing this so frequently. It's great to see. Look, obviously, I'm joined by the amazing Josh Greenfield and the equally amazing Tim Jones there on the classic team. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. You know the drill. We've only got half an hour. I'm going to be super weird, super awkward, and just pepper you with questions, and we'll be going reasonably quick at a breakneck pace, but we'll see how we go. Look, guys, I just wanted to do something a little bit different and kind of lean in on the design philosophy behind Season of Discovery for this one. So you guys can sort of throw questions at, look at each other and decide who answers what. But if we tear through these classes and I just ask you guys a little bit of a making of question, we'll start with maybe Warlocks. What was the design philosophy for the Warlock in Season of Discovery? What do you want it to be moving forward?
Well,
I'll
I
take.
maybe an interesting place to start this is just like how we started development on Season of Discovery.
Hmm.
In a bit of a different place now than it was when we started. Like we started about the we've been in development for almost over a year probably on all of this. And one of the first things that we wanted to try was just like how do we actually deliver giving taunt to a paladin, or like tools that we wanted to bring up um underrepresented specializations and classes. And we played around with like, well, is it like a specific item that has an aura on it that gives you access to this ability? And then we eventually figured out that we could actually deliver these through enchantments and these override spells that give you access to these. And funnily enough, um, I think Rogue Tank was the very first thing that we that we built. We're sort of going in a direction of just like what are what are fantasies that people have never been able to explore before with their class, and not even from like a specialization standpoint, but just like what is a rogue? A rogue is a ninja, a pirate, a swashbuckler, a fencer, and even some of the old class fantasies of like how rogue was in alpha with bucklers as an item that they could equip. So, you know, some new stuff, some existing fantasy that we were building on, but we were really just like throwing stuff at the wall to see what would stick. And um, we kind of have a much more tame version of what we were starting out with in terms of runes and class design philosophy. I don't know if
And
you want
that, yeah, that's kind of how the development process generally works too. You generally start kind of pie in the sky and you sort of work backwards from there. I think I was in another interview today, and I jokingly, it's not really that much of a joke. There was about three times more abilities on the docket originally, and we kind of had to cut that back. I mean, partially for logistical reasons, and partially just because it was just like that's too many buttons, man. Like that was kind of a thing. But I think one of the things that we did when we first sat down is like, I don't know what Tim was saying, is like, how do we want to kind of organize this, and how do we want to sort of structure it? And a lot of these structures we made for classes weren't really player facing. It's like we call them like archetypes essentially, where we had like a big spreadsheet, and on the spreadsheet there's like a column of like, this is all the duelist rogue stuff, this is all the tank, like demonology tank warlock stuff. This is all, and we kind of had them organized in those little archetypes. And that's sort of like that. We sort of built them around like, what are these class fantasies? What is the chrono mage? What is a like duelist rogue? What is a martyr paladin look like, and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, bearing all that in mind through this line of questioning, it's nice to know that that pie in the sky idea was kind of the start and then it got whittled down over time. But I'd love to know, what kind of things hit the cutting room floor, and people might sort of say, why would you ask about that if we're not getting it? And I just sort of find these, like I say, the making of documentary style questions more interesting, where if I'll let you guys maybe, or I could pick a class or you could pick a class. If you remember like some of the more outrageous suggestions that you had amongst the team that you did say, oh, we really can't do that.
There was a lot of stuff early on that we were like, man, wouldn't it be cool if? And you know, let me start by saying that what is classic or what is vanilla is very subjective, right? Like we've said before, you ask 10 different people, like, what do they consider the sort of break point between the original design philosophy and what came later, and you'll get like 10 different answers, right? But there were a few things that we kind of early on sort of put uh I don't want to say constraints, but we said to ourselves, we're going to try to avoid this stuff. And so, like a good example of that is like cheat death with rogues, or like ardent defender for paladins, some sort of cheat death ability. Those are it. Just for we kind of talking about it didn't really feel like that felt super original. WoW, a lot of the things we have also could arguably be considered the same way, but that was one of those things. And also just movement abilities
Yeah.
too. Like knockbacks are actually a kind of a interesting sort of like how the sauce is made. Knockbacks don't actually work in original WoW. Like that was a construct that came along in later versions of WoW. And so we went into started to look at like, oh, what it would it look like if you got like Typhoon or something as a druid to knock people back. And it's like, well, we started to look at rebuilding how that would work in original WoW, and then we started really thinking about it. And it's like, yeah, we can do it, but it just does that feel right? Be able to move people around, like Warriors had like basically a death grip at one point too, and it's like, oh, moving people around the battlefield, does that feel
It was
very
cool. Like
vanilla?
they
It
threw
was
a chain
cool.
at something and whipped them back,
Yeah,
and maybe there's some place for that to live one day. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
someday, but
we don't want to dilute other like major class fantasies like Warriors being able to charge, mages
Mm.
being able to
yeah,
blink. And we know we're augmenting those in specific ways, but like Warlocks getting Demonic Circle, or I forget what the like the Druid giving everyone a speed buff in the raid. Those kind of things we're going to stay away with, because players' ability to move at a specific pace around the battlefield, it has a huge influence on encounter design too. And we don't want to trivialize content, even you know when players have that access to that power, and when everyone has access to those powers.
Okay. Um, Guys, I can see what's happening here. We don't want to go too in depth with all of the classes because I don't know, I understand because you don't want to show your cards because then you might delve into waters where you're discussing runes that we don't know about yet and abilities that are supposed to be surprises. So I totally get it. Expertly dodging the question there, both of you. So well done. No, you gave great answers. I'm joking, but look, I'll trash kind of the making you go through each class plan, and how about we just do this one next? I can see the kind of smile on your face that comes up when you discuss some of these abilities, both of you. So, if you can say, without giving much away, what were some of the greatest challenges or most fun that you had in designing some of these classes?
yeah. I mean, like it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. I don't want to give you too much of a recycled answer, but it's what makes these classes. The biggest challenge is always like what's the line, like what's going too far, what's too many buttons to push, what's things like that. And that was something that we sort of struggled with early on, and we had to do a lot of kind of like going back to the drawing board and sort of reconfiguring what runes we were going to make available, when we were going to make them available, and we sort of plotted out that arc of going from like 25 to 40 to 50 to 60. So that was the biggest challenge. I think the most fun is really just like what sort of like what it like wish list what if scenario could we come up with for things that would be just fun and cool and additive to original WoW, while still hopefully not taking too much away from what original WoW is.
All right.
So,
No, no,
keep posting a little bit.
no, no, no. I can't begrudge you. You're a senior producer. I can't begrudge you for giving me a Blizzard answer. That's fine. Look, guys, that's incumbent on me as the interviewer to push you a little bit. So I see what's going on. Let me try this one. Um, Look, let's do a quick lightning round with just three simple questions that may well be one-word answers that we'll see how we go. Given the shorter-term season, have you guys planted anything fun in the game that you honestly question whether anyone will find?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, yes, I think there's a few things that it's like, wow, that's pretty buried. Well, but I never underestimate players, Josh.
Oh, no, 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 I don't. And that's the thing. These guys.
clever.
They'll find things, but so it's more maybe a two-part question. It's like, yeah, are there going to be difficult things to find? As you've said, you've just answered that one. But then it's kind of the offshoot of, we always speculate, and even through Classic, I was getting messages from listeners going, I think I've uncovered the greatest hidden secret in WoW, 20 years under the hood, blah, blah, blah. So it's hard with the seasonal server, but I'm saying, have you guys had a bit of a tongue-in-cheek moment and gone, let's put something stupidly hard to find in this game?
I don't think that there's going to be something that is so cryptic. I mean, there will be things that are difficult to find, but I think with good old fashioned, just like exploration and looking in every nook and cranny of zones and the raid, that people will come across these things and share with each other. And yeah, we hope that there's some surprises.
Sure. Yeah, no talk to this NPC 35 times at a full moon on this day of the month.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, I've played MMOs, the older ones that do things like that, and it's like that might be a little too far.
Fair
But I
enough.
think one of the things that's going to be interesting is you might notice something, you're like, I think that's new, and then your class can't interact with it, and so then you go and tell your friends oh, everybody come here, look at this thing, and maybe there's something. So that's one of the things that we think is going to be really cool is not only finding something that's out of place, but figuring out who can utilize it.
And I also I didn't mean to imply that we weren't ever going to tie anything to the day and night cycle. We definitely can, maybe have, but maybe not talk to an NPC 35 times in a row.
Yeah.
Maybe something happens at night that doesn't during the day.
Yeah, I think you guys implied that earlier as well, so that's really cool to hear. Hey, have any significant gold sinks been added without giving too much away? Anything you can say on that?
Well, might be a little bit of a play and find out.
Okay, no, fair enough. That's fine. I was gonna I was gonna give you the options of yes, no, or I'm a massive dork who refuses to answer the question, and it seems like we've gone with the latter. That's all right. Look,
it's tough. That's the hardest thing about doing these interviews for this right now. Is
I know.
I could talk about all this, but
I know. It's all good. Look, here's a tough question as well in a way, and I'm so sorry to the 98% of people that this question does not pertain to, but I have to do it, or the people in my region will kill me. Look, OCE, the problem child of the Warcraft family, you guys will be watching this region like a hawk, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Realm management is becomes one of my main jobs whenever we ship a new thing, and I'm probably going to be in a permanent war room chat with our live ops production and stuff, trying to make sure that that's all looking good weeks after launch. So.
Fair enough. I think that's all everyone wants to hear in the OCE region. All right, guys, look. What was the design philosophy with Professions? We know so little going forward. I don't want you to show you cards, but I want to know what was in your head as the overall goal with Professions in Season of Discovery.
It's something that's going to evolve over the multiple phases. I think that there's just like with classes, identifying an archetype of a class, whether that's the periodic damage of a warlock, or whether a warlock being able to become the demon instead of just controlling the demon. Aspects of Professions, making gathering interesting, really playing into hidden recipes that you can find, just things that stand out to me, like joining the Mithril Order as a blacksmith, getting into the different specializations as a leather worker, finding those weird instances where you need more than the maximum amount of skill to get the Onyxia scales or the hide of the beast, and giving players access to those tools and having them intersect with just I think the game is more interesting when profession items are actually relevant and accessible, and so we've gone to decent lengths in the first phase of helping sort of prop certain lower level items up, add new profession items where it's exciting, and there's a lot more that we can do that we're excited to do in future phases as well.
Very
Yeah,
good.
to get into a little bit more specifics, like without revealing too much, like, I think looking at engineering, for example, it's kind of like Tim was in my office talking to me about this earlier, and he referred to it as the Fury Warrior of professions. It just kind of scales infinitely, and it always is good, right? And it's, the way I always think about it is it's probably the most complete profession in terms of like utility from start to finish. Like it's always valuable, right? And we don't want to take that away, and we don't want to neglect it either. But at the same point, we really love it if other professions had some of that as well.
Yeah.
So it got a little bit of that spotlight too, and also scale a little bit better, so that it wasn't something that you kind of just get and forget. Oh, I need to be an armor smith for my guild for Thorium Brotherhood rep.
Yeah. And engineering needs healthy competition.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's philosophically like one of the things that we're trying to kind of do is like we're kind of using engineering as the model. In a lot of ways, we're kind of doing the same thing with like classes too. It's like Fury Warriors, the model, right? And then we kind of want to try and elevate everything else to that if we can. I think that there's a world where you're still going to want to take engineering if you're serious about PvP, for example. I don't think that's going to change. I don't think we want it to, but we would definitely like to have those other things get some time in the sun.
So the moral of the story, and this seems to be the case across a lot of things with Season of Discovery, would it be fair to say that pick what profession you enjoy and it will reward you at the end of the day with a new experience?
Yeah, that is our goal.
That's our goal.
Okay, very good. Look, here's a heavy one for you. Enjoy this. Let's talk about actual choice versus illusion of choice, such as what the hunters may experience in Season of Discovery. Now, you guys might balk at me, maybe unfairly raising that example, but it is something the community is already discussing. I want to hear from you about, again, the design philosophy on these runes and their slots, and having actual competition of choice versus like, oh, well, I'm a resto druid, so we all know I kind of have to take that rune, if you know what I mean.
I mean, I think our ultimate goal is to provide people with choice in a rune slot for having multiple choices of runes for a specific play style. And I think some classes really accomplish that very well. And I think what people like and respond to and use will have telemetry on all the runes that people use for every specialization, and we're gonna learn a lot from that. And I think that, just to reiterate what I said initially, like we want players to have choice, to have, like, if I want to be an elemental shaman, that I have multiple choices in each rune slot that actually feel good to take.
Going back to a little bit of the design philosophy around runes early on, whenever we locked in on what we wanted the system to be, is it's like, hey, if you're a resto druid and you like being a resto druid, we want to make you be able to do what you do better, right? But we also want to give you the option to on the fly pivot into doing something slightly different. And that's one of the kind of cool things about the rune system. It's sort of layered on top of the other existing original WoW systems, so that it's like, hey, I am gonna go do this quest, so I'm gonna take Fury of Stormrage for free wrath, so I can just grind a lot easier or kill things a lot easier, faster, with less downtime. And so that's one of those things that, like, it's not necessarily every rune doesn't have to be like a hard choice you make, and that's like, I am a Fury of Stormrage druid all the time. It's like, no, I'm a Furious Stormrage druid when I do this quest in Silithus. You know what I mean? And that's okay. There's a little bit of it's okay if you're kind of flippy flopping on these things on the fly. And that's the beauty of the system, is it's not like I don't got to go back to a trainer and do it. It's just like, well, I'm going to pivot what I'm doing right now in this situation.
Okay.
Also, your gameplay style changes up a lot. Like, something people will learn is that sometimes, like, you'll run out of mana as a hunter, and you might need to swap from being a ranged DPS to a melee DPS just because of your resources at low levels. And something people will learn is that you can just swap your equipment and have a new ability, like, in between combat. So that'll be something that is maybe on the hard to master end of the rune spectrum in figuring out, like, well, maybe I'm not always using this rune in combat. Maybe I swap every other combat that I have. So I think people there's
I
layers
think
of complexity that people haven't experienced yet with the
one
system.
one of the more fun things too about watching community speculation right now is that everybody is like, oh well, if you're gonna play like this, you need this rune, and you need this rune, this is the correct way to do it. And it's just like we've got people testing internally, and let's get spicy. Somebody's like, hey, secretly, two-hand enhancement is actually the best version of enhancement at 25.
Mm.
We figured that out internally,
Right.
at least in our testing.
Right.
And so it's like it may not be the critical path that you expect it to be to get there, but there's going
Mm.
to be a lot of optimizing, a lot of looking at these things and mixing and matching that people are going to figure out over time. That may not be obvious. It may not slap you in the face
Yeah.
that this is the correct thing to do, because there's really no correct thing to do. But
Mm.
I think there's going to be a lot more versions of correct than you may think. There will always be one thing that edges out everything else, right? But I think there's going to be a lot more viable things than people expect.
I love to hear it. The runes can lie. We'll see. We'll see. Look,
Yeah.
guys, here's a. I keep saying another tough one, but this will make you think about how to answer this one. Look, it's very fair to say that world PvP, or what I should say, large scale world PvP throughout Classic's lifetime, has struggled technically. I think that a lot of justifiable criticism has come at the server's capacity or the client's capacity, however you term it technically, to handle a lot of players in one small space engaging with each other in PvP. It's interesting, and it stood out to me immediately upon announcement that there are these world PvP events being made for Season of Discovery in a way in which it's almost like not leaning on it as the focal point of the content, but they're going to be heavily encouraged. So, as somewhat of a person who might be a bit cautious going into that, what can I expect to see be different? Is it just the fact that, oh, we're going to layer the hell out of it? Or can I expect a better technical performance in World PvP if it's being encouraged in this way in Season of Discovery?
It, I think one of the things to think about too with a lot of the issues with world PvP is sort of the natural kind of focal points of world PvP in original WoW, like Blackrock Mountain, for example. It's like a bottleneck, right? And so there's kind of not really much of a way to avoid a lot of people being in one place. And I think one of the things we're trying to do with the new PvP objectives that we're making is trying to kind of spread them out so that you're not necessarily incentivized to all go to one place in a zone, at least not as much. In terms of like technical solves for that and stuff, that's something we're always kind of looking at. One of the problems that just online games in general have is that the way kind of the client server relationship works, without getting too deep into the weeds, is like there's a series of messages that go back and forth for everything that players do, the way that they're facing, the way the spells they're casting, all of these things. And whenever you get a lot of people, it becomes kind of this like multiplying n squared problem, that there's like all of these multiplicative things stacking up that ends up essentially causing a backup on the server for them to be able to process those messages. And there's not there's always going to be an upper limit, and that's not really technically solvable right now with the technology that exists. But it's something that we're trying to improve upon. We did a lot of this with like AQ, the AQ gate opening, where we actually created new tech, which it still seemed visually kind of laggy, because what we did was we stopped sending facing updates for your character whenever a certain threshold of basically actors or players were in one area. And there's probably more that we can do there, and we're going to continue. And we've done a little bit more on top of that since the original 2019 AQ event or 2020 AQ event. But that's the kind of thing where we can try and optimize and get savings. But yeah, it was a big, long, rambling answer to say yes, but I think a lot of it is design, and a lot of it is just sort of a natural. This is how kind of a client server relationship with servers work.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Tim, what was the greatest difficulty in coming up with new itemization?
I think one of the fun challenges with itemization is making sure that we make items that are exciting and powerful, but at the same time we don't completely negate all the rewards that are to come in the next phase. Like it's really easy for me to make a item level 50 epic sword that drops from Akamai or something like that, but then like, well, will anyone want to get Whirlwind Axe in the next phase? Will anyone want to, complete X amount of quests? And that's, that we want people to feel incentivized to do all the content in the outdoor world. And that's not to say that some of the rewards won't be better than some quest items in the levels immediately following up. But that also influenced the amount of levels that we have in between our brackets. I think we originally had another phase with a smaller level bracket originally planned, but I think we recognized that it would be harder to actually make meaningful rewards that don't completely eclipse what's coming in the next phase. So I think that was the biggest challenge, and I think we succeeded. I think we have some pretty cool items that people haven't seen yet. Uh,
There's also a couple of kind of fun utility things in Black Fathom Deeps that I think people are going to find that may maintain value for longer, which feels very original WoW, feels very vanilla, right? For an item that you get early to maintain value for a little while. But like Tim said, we gotta strike a balance. We don't want to invalidate what comes in.
Mm. All right, Tim, let's stick with you for this one. If I were to get you to choose your preference between these two words, you let me know which one you like better, vertical or horizontal.
um,
You don't have to answer if you don't want to. You don't. I'll give you a pass. I'll give you an out.
personally, no, I'll give you an answer. I like horizontal a lot. I think giving people choice on how they play the game. I mean, that's essentially what runes are for the entirety of the game. They're as relevant at lower levels as they are at later levels. So we're a huge fan of sort of the choice that gives players the customization, and that's what the season is all about, is just shaking up the meta. And is there a place for more horizontal progression at max level? It's something that we're going to be experimenting with. Us wanting to shake up the meta does not end at any given phase. So I'll leave you with that.
Too easy. Two really quick questions. I know we've got 2 minutes left. Really quick answer if you need be on this one. Is there for the people who aren't happy about Season of Discovery, there's a minority of people out there who are really unhappy they didn't get a fresh vanilla. Is there a world in which a fresh era server and a season, whichever season it might be, can live side by side? Or does the business element of things say it can't be done? If you can answer.
I wouldn't say it can't be done. It's mostly just we really have to look at what the right it's a tricky answer, honestly. It's a tricky answer. We understand that there's definitely a group of people that just want fresh, no changes vanilla. And I think that it would be pretty foolish to say that they'll never get it again, but it's just finding the right time and where it fits
Yep.
in things. And also kind of just seeing like what the reaction to things are, and like, maybe we hit a point where it's like, now's a good time to kind of supplement what we have with a new fresh server. But it's just I feel kind of bad that the chips have fallen the way they have, and we haven't been able to find the right time for it. But I hope we do
Okay.
sooner rather than
Too easy. Last quick personal question, and I'm going to sneak this one in. This wasn't on the list. Alex can jump in if you can't answer it. Tim, Josh, look, more for Tim, but Josh, answer if you can. Look, I've been running the show for 6 years. Tim, you're, I think it's fair to say, somewhat of an avid listener. Josh, you listen in on the show when you can. Kevin Jordan was on the show years ago, former WoW designer, saying he would have killed for a show like Countdown while he was working on the game for the feedback that he got from the players. Tim, has Countdown made your life better, worse, or what, moving through the design process?
It's exponentially better. Like you and your listeners have some of the most thoughtful and intelligent conversations in the entire WoW community. So I love you. I love your podcast. I love your listeners. I just I was hanging up my Christmas lights this weekend and just listening, and I had this vivid deja vu. I was doing this exact same thing, listening to Countdown, putting up my Christmas lights, listening to feedback on the Wrath Classic launch in Ulduar. So it's an integral part of my job to just consume community feedback, and your podcast is a pivotal part of that. So thank you, Josh.
I don't like to play favorites. I'm gonna not touch your ego quite as much as you did. But I consume an enormous amount of classic content, and I generally prefer more frank. Not obviously no one wants to listen to someone screaming at them, but I really like the sort of honest and genuine feedback that we get from creators like you, and it is very very valuable to us. But it's funny, like we come in a lot in the morning and it's like, did you listen to the episode of like Countdown? I'll go into Tim's office and we'll talk about it. That's like I have my coffee and we're talking. Kind of ritual for us. So it's not just you; it's other creators too.
No, of course, of course. I appreciate it. Look, it's an awkward forced answer because I also would have accepted your show sucks. But yeah,
No, that's cool.
thanks so much, guys. Look, I think Alex is going to kick us out, but you've been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.